Just a quick little disclaimer before we start this video. I know that's going to be posted the day of the 13th, March 13th, the day before free agency actually starts, and all these players intend to sign contracts with different teams. So it seems weird. It might seem weird if some of my picks say, oh, they need this, but then they went out and they got a player like that in free agency. That's because I recorded this video the day of the whole Browns thing, when social media blew up because the Browns got Jarvis Landry and Tyrod Taylor and all that stuff. So that's why some of these picks may be a little bit off. I never really got around to posting the video because of the whole Browns thing, and I had to, reevaluate my picks and stuff like that. And I've been kind of sick since coming home for spring break, and I never just really got around to uploading it. Kind of was in my bed for a while, but it's uploaded now, obviously, as you're listening to me talk. So let's just get right into the video.
Alright, what's going on, guys? It's XLT here, bringing you a brand new video on my channel.
But seriously, what is going on, guys? It is XLT here, bringing you a brand new video on my channel. If you couldn't tell, that definitely was not my voice. My roommate thought it would be funny, or not my roommate, my sweet mate thought it would be funny if he could intro one of my videos, because it's kind of a meme around the dorm that, I make YouTube videos and I create content and all this stuff. They like to put it on the speaker and play it really loud to try and embarrass me, and at first it bugged me, but now I don't really care. I'm comfortable with the content I create and putting my voice and opinion out there on the internet. So he thought it would be funny if he got to do the intro, so I let him do the intro. So now we're back to me. We're gonna actually be diving into the video today, and it's gonna be the mock draft 4.0, or the post-combine mock draft, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it 4.0 because it is going to be my fourth mock draft of, mock draft season, SZN, mock draft season. That's what I want to call it. So, that's what we're going to be doing today. Obviously, a lot of what happened in the combine is going to be taken into effect in this video. There's a lot of different picks. I don't know how many are actually different, but there was a lot of stuff that happened at the combine. Some people, performed very, very well, exceeded expectations, and there was definitely some combine stars that came out and had a really good combine that we didn't think were necessarily gonna have one, and then there were some guys who underperformed. I don't take the combine too seriously into effect. I really try to look at game film, because that is what really tells the tale of the tape. Rarely ever does a combine superstar end up turning into an NFL superstar. We had that case with Chris Johnson, but because people just say, oh my gosh, he was a combine monster, but when you go back and really look at his tape, he was amazing at ECU. There hasn't really been guys that they just kill the combine and then they come in and they are just absolute superstars. Usually the guys that are really good in college come in, do very well in the combine, and then translate that to the NFL. Like I've said, rarely do we ever see just a guy who's unknown in college come in, kill the combine, and then go and be one of the best pros in the entire league. But with that being said, the combine was taken into effect a little bit. Some guys dropped, some guys rose. That just all depended on where I thought the team would fit, or where I thought the player would fit on certain teams and all that good stuff. So we're going to be jumping into the video right now. Just to clear things up a little bit, when I do these mock drafts, it's not just my personal opinion on the players. It's going to be a combination of a lot of things. It's going to be what a team needs, what direction I think they're going to go, and like my gut feeling. It's not just all calculated. Like, it's not me saying, oh, this person is so good, they should go in this spot. There are obviously some dynamics. Teams have drafted well in the years past, teams have drafted bad, and so I kind of take all of that into account. I take into account like how good a player was, what their season was like, what their stats looked like, the level of team they played against, like the level of competition, how well they did at the combine, all that stuff. I take it and I compile it into one kind of like system, and then that's how I formulate all my picks, and that's how I determine who's going to go where and all that good stuff. So for the sake of this mock draft, I'm not going to be doing any free agency predictions or anything like that. I know I already did a video, but that's going to be a separate realm, and this is going to be a separate realm. I'm not taking any of that prediction into this video. So with that being said, this is just going to be basically, a post-combine mock draft, just based off of their season and the combine, what's going to happen. I'm not even going to think about free agency. We're just going to pretend like it's not going to happen, and then I'll have a second mock draft after the free agency period, kind of addressing, okay, so if I say, that a team is going to draft a running back, and then they go out and get a running back in free agency, obviously, I am not going to make them draft another running back in the draft. I'm going to have them address a different position, and that's just an example that probably isn't going to happen in this video. So this is just going to be, a video straight up about the draft, what a team needs, and it's no free agency is influenced at all. So with all that being said, I know that's kind of a little long and drawn out there, but with all that being said, let's jump right into this mock draft. With the number 1 overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Cleveland Browns taking who I think everybody thinks is the number 1 overall player in this draft, and that is Saquon Barkley, the running back out of Penn State. He's a guy that can do it all. He can run very, very well between the tackles and outside. He's very elusive, very physical.
physical, very fast, as we saw with a 4.440. He's very explosive, as we saw with his long broad jump and his super high vertical well, not super high, but it's really high for a guy who's only 6 foot 233. He shows a lot of explosiveness in his lower half, and I think the Cleveland Browns will be missing out a lot if they didn't take him with the #1 overall pick. I think this is a guy that a lot of people are labeling as a generational talent, and I am going to agree with them when they say that. I don't think that this guy is miss-worthy. I don't think you can pass on him, and I don't think there's any quarterbacks really worth taking with the #1 overall pick after the showing at the combine by any of them, and by the showing at the combine of Saquon Barkley. So that's who I think the Cleveland Browns should take with the #1 overall pick. And jumping into the second overall pick, I have the New York Giants taking Quentin Nelson, the offensive guard from Notre Dame. There have been rumors swirling around that Giants front office that they might not take a quarterback in this year's draft, that they might, play out Eli's tenure or the rest of his career in New York, and then they're going to go look for a quarterback, maybe in free agency or maybe in the draft. I'm not sure yet. But for now, to protect Eli and to add to the running game, I think they need to go get an offensive lineman, and I think that that's what they're going to do too. Quentin Nelson, a very, very good run blocker, one of the most talented players in this draft. He's arguably the first best offensive player. It just depends on how much you value running backs and how much you value linemen, but Quentin Nelson is one of the better lineman prospects we've seen in the last few years, especially at the interior lineman position. He can play left guard, right guard. You may be able to move him to tackle too, because I know that you have a huge concern with Eric Flowers there, or I don't really know what the Giants would do, but I think he would go very good in the right guard spot or in the left guard spot. They could also go out and get Andrew Norwell, but I don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not, so we're going to just err on the side of caution and say it won't happen, as throughout this video I'm just going to be going on, team needs and not based off of free agency. So free agency predictions or thoughts or anything like that. So Quentin Nelson with the #2 pick. Some people may think it's a reach, some people may think it's not, but I think that it's a very good pick for the New York Giants. Jumping into the #3 overall pick, we have the Indianapolis Colts taking Bradley Chubb, a defensive end from NC State, a guy who can pretty much do it all on the offensive line, or not on the offensive line, on the defensive line. He can play, he's a little too small to play a 3-4 end, but he's about 270 pounds. If he puts on maybe 10, 20 more pounds, he could be able to play that interior or 3-4 line defensive line position. But since the Colts are in a 4-3, I think he fits very well at defensive end. He's a physical run stopper, but he's not super good at stopping the run, but he can get after the run and he can get physical with the lineman, get hands on and create a push, stretch a play out, do all that good stuff. And he can also get after the passer if he needs to. He's probably the best defensive end prospect in this draft, but I wouldn't say that he's the best defensive player. I think there are other guys on this list, but he's a guy that's very well rounded. He's very physical. He plays with 110%, and the Colts need talent pretty much everywhere except for interior defensive line and maybe safeties. They got some young safeties that they like. So I think that Bradley Chubb is a smart move here at #3. With the 4th overall pick, I think the Cleveland Browns will go out and get Sam Darnold, the quarterback from USC. As we saw, a couple days ago, we saw that, not a couple days, well, maybe by the time this video goes up, it'll be a couple days, but a couple days ago, or yesterday, by the time I'm recording this, it was yesterday, they traded for Tyrod Taylor. I think he's more of a placeholding quarterback in terms of the Browns' situational, where they stand right now. He's a 28-year-old quarterback. He's got 1 or 2 years left on his contract, I'm pretty sure. So maybe you go out and get a quarterback, you groom him under Tyrod. If Tyrod doesn't do well in his first season, then maybe you let him go and you move on to the next guy, or you let him play out his contract and then you move on to the younger option, because they are a very young team, especially on the defensive side of the ball and in the wide receiver department, and at the running back department if they choose to draft Saquon Barkley at the #1 overall pick, which I think they should. So Sam Darnold right here, it's a guy that they're very high on. I don't think that they would get Josh Rosen, even because they've had super big concerns with his character, I think, when he was at UCLA, and I don't know if they met with him at the combine, but I do know that they're really high on Sam Darnold, so I can see them totally taking him with the #4 pick. With the #5 overall pick in this mock draft, I have another quarterback being taken, and that is going to be Josh Rosen, the quarterback out of UCLA, obviously. The Broncos need a quarterback. They've been playing the quarterback carousel for a few years now, since Peyton Manning's retired, and none of the guys are very good. So I think they need to go out and get a quarterback not in free agency, in the draft, to address that need. There are talented offensive weapons. You got Jake Butt, who's an up-and-coming tight end, should be healthy and ready to go next year. You got Emmanuel Sanders, who's a good slot receiver, and you got Demaryius Thomas, who's a physical jump ball receiver who can go up and get a ball, and he's a pretty good route runner. So I think Josh Rosen, if you give him, if you get Josh Rosen in that offense with some weapons at the tight end and wide receiver position, I think he'll have some good success. I would have Josh Allen here, but I'm just not as high on him as a lot of people are. But I definitely could see the Broncos taking him because John Elway is high on him. But I think their best decision would be Josh Rosen, since he is the best quarterback in this draft. I don't think they could pass on him at the #5 overall spot if he is available there. And in this mock draft, he is available there, so I think they take him. With the number 6 overall pick, I have the New York Jets taking Baker Mayfield, the quarterback out of Oklahoma. A lot of people aren't super high on this guy, and a lot of people are. I'm one of the people who think he can be a very good quarterback in the NFL. He's got the winning mentality. He's got, a very good character on the field, at least. In terms of, rallying the team around him and making everybody around him better, he's good. He had some questionable decisions against Kansas and against a couple other teams, according to some people's eyes, but to me, that's just him being a competitor. I think he wants to go out there and give 110%. He's very accurate. And he's very good at picking up offenses. The offense that he ran at Oklahoma was a pretty complicated one, but it wasn't one that required a ton of under center ability. So maybe that's going to be that's his biggest struggle, or that's going to be his biggest struggle coming into the NFL, is going to be how he's going to play under center. But I feel like the Jets want to go out and get a quarterback. If they value Josh Allen higher, then I think they could go get him here. But I just have a feeling that they want Baker Mayfield, a winning attitude guy, a guy who wants to come in and win games and change a franchise. Josh Allen doesn't really seem to be that guy. He's kind of just a go with the flow dude, but Baker wants to make an impact and he wants to be a winner, and I think the Jets desperately need that, as they don't really have a quarterback. Christian Hackenberg hasn't worked out, Bryce Petty hasn't worked out, and I'm gonna say throughout this video, I don't think they're gonna get free agency doesn't really matter in terms of this. It's just what your team needs. With that being said, I don't think they're gonna get Kirk Cousins, so they should target a quarterback in the draft. Even if they do, I think they should target one because Kirk Cousins isn't gonna be there forever, and you may want to go out and draft a younger guy. So Baker Mayfield, I think, is a very good pick here. They obviously they could go a bunch of different ways. They could go defensive back here, but I think quarterback is one of the priorities. It's very high up on their draft board. With the number 7 overall pick, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking Minkah Fitzpatrick, the defensive back out of Alabama. The defense struggled for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. They didn't really have a ton of production out of the secondary or the defensive line. Both of directions I see. I don't really think there's a D lineman that you can take this high, at least interiorly or on the edge. I don't think that there's a guy that you can put at number 7. After watching some film, I just don't think that there's any guys that you can justify putting at this spot. But Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the most versatile players in this draft, has played outside corner or boundary corner, as a lot of people, professionals, quote unquote, like to say it. And he's also played a lot of nickel. He's played a lot of safety, and he's very good at safety. I think he projects best there. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers definitely do need a safety. TJ Ward wasn't very good. Keith Tandy, I think is his name, hasn't been very good for them. He was good for like a couple weeks, like a couple years ago, and people saw some potential, skill out of him, or some potential success at him playing the free safety position. But I feel like Minkah Fitzpatrick is the guy you got to go with here. I could definitely see Derwin James, but I think that Minkah's ability to play a bunch of different positions helps. I mean, Derwin James is just an athletic freak, and you can play him at the nickel corner and safety and linebacker, but I feel like they don't really need linebackers much. They've got Quan Alexander, Kendall Beckwith, and Levante David. I think they're set there. They don't really need any more in-the-box help in terms of linebackers or anything like that. So I think they need to go out and get a guy that's going to help them in their defensive secondary, and whatever position it may be, whether it's safety, corner, nickel, it doesn't really matter. Minkah Fitzpatrick can play them all. Vernon Hargraves has been a guy that hasn't really come into his own yet, so I think that that's what they need to do next. Just target a guy that can, really help him out and, help add a lot of depth and a lot of versatility to that secondary. With the 8th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Roquan Smith, the middle linebacker, or just linebacker in general, out of Georgia. My favorite defensive player and overall player in this draft. He's a guy that runs sideline to sideline. He's got insane athletic ability at that inside linebacker position, and really was a big reason why Georgia had so much success. That linebacking core at Georgia was very, very good. They had guys like, obviously, Roquan Smith, and then they had Lorenzo Carter, who had a very good showing at the Combine. He was a very big athletic dude, but Roquan Smith is going to help the Bears in a lot of ways, because the Bears just released their quote-unquote star middle linebacker in Jarrell Freeman, a guy who would really help that team out and really was a vital part of that front seven. Very good in coverage too, but I think Roquan Smith is the direction that you have to go here because of the cuts that they've made in the offseason, and I think that they don't really have any good players at the inside linebacker position, at least in that 3-4 scheme. So I think you should go out and get Roquan Smith. He's very good in coverage. You won't have to sub him out in nickel packages or dime packages or anything like that. You can leave him out on the field, and he's going to give you good tackling and good run stopping ability, and he's going to give you good coverage ability. So I think with his versatility, I think it's a big reason why the Bears should draft him. One of the better players in college football this last season, and I think that maybe he can grow into be your next Brian Urlacher. I'm not really sure I don't want to put the Hall of Fame label on anybody yet, but I do like the way he plays, and he's a little bit small for the NFL at least at the inside linebacker position, but I still think he's very good, and he's going to add a lot to that Bears defense. Moving on to the number 9 pick, I have the San Francisco 49ers taking Denzel Ward, the cornerback out of Ohio State. State. One of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. In my opinion, he's the number 2 cornerback, or he probably is the number 1. He's a very good man shutdown corner. He's very good in press and man situations. He likes to get his hands on and disrupt the receivers, even though he is a smaller guy. He did, I think he might have put up close to 20 on the bench, which is kind of surprising to me because he's a little bit of a smaller frame. So 20 on the bench for a corner is a very good mark, and I think that, the one thing that for me that he needs to work on is just making plays on the ball. He didn't have a lot of interceptions. I think he only had like 1 or 2 all season, and he got targeted a lot. He really did, but he didn't come up with a lot of interceptions. He dropped a couple, so that would be my big thing for him. That and size is obviously a concern, but I think his speed and his physicality at the corner position more than make up for that. It's San Francisco 49er team that has some talent at cornerback, some guys that need to come up and develop, but I think Denzel Ward can be a pretty good number 1 or number 2 corner for you, depending on what you plan to do with Rashard Robinson and Ahkello Witherspoon. I think Ahkello Witherspoon would be a good number 2, and then you go out and you play Denzel at the 1 and Rashard in the nickel. I'm not really sure what you do there, but John Lynch, being the defensive mind that he is, the guy who likes defense, is a Hall of Fame safety, played for the Bucks and the Broncos, so I think he wants to go out and he wants to build up this defense. I could definitely see a wide receiver being taken here, but I'm not really too high on that. Calvin Ridley could go here, but I think John Lynch is going to value defense more, and he's going to build around the defense, make the defense. They've already got a lot of good pieces on that defensive front. They've got Arik Armstead, Aaron Lynch, Solomon Thomas, the guy that drafted DeForest Buckner. I don't know why his name didn't come to me, but you've also got guys like Jimmy Ward. Jaquiski Tartt is very good, free safety, very underrated. And you've got obviously Reuben Foster, who, if he can figure out that hitting women is a bad thing, he could be able to stay on the field. But he's a very good middle linebacker, and I think Denzel Ward would add to the youth and the explosiveness. He would add a lot of good cover ability, and he's gonna, I think, develop into one of the more shutdown corners in the NFL. With the 10th overall pick, I have the Oakland Raiders taking Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker out of Virginia Tech. It's crazy that this kid is only 19 years old. On draft night, wherever he gets drafted, possibly to the Oakland Raiders, he's going to be a 19-year-old, which is absolutely insane. He's huge. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He's insanely athletic. His broad jump was very good. His vertical was very good, and he ran a 4.55 40. Reminds me a lot of Jadeveon Clowney's combine a little bit. Jadeveon Clowney was faster a little bit, but Tremaine Edmonds is a very versatile player. That's a theme that's becoming very prominent in the NFL and in college football, is guys who can play multiple positions and who can affect the game in a lot of different ways, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And Tremaine Edmonds is a guy who can play inside linebacker, outside linebacker, in a 3-4 or a 4-3 system. He's a really good blitzer. He can get after the quarterback, especially from the middle linebacker position. He's very fast. He likes to run sideline to sideline. He's good at shooting gaps and taking advantage of zone read schemes, I guess, and just shooting gaps and tackling the running back or the quarterback. And he's pretty good in coverage for a guy who's 6'5", 255 pounds. So my one knock on him is his physicality. If he can just learn to take on blocks instead of running around them from time to time, because sometimes that creates a hole when you run around a block instead of through it. So if he could work on that, that'd be great. And the Oakland Raiders, I think should take him because of the middle linebacker, or just the linebacker troubles in general that they've had. They just cut Aldon Smith this last week. They don't really have a second inside middle linebacker. If they plan to cut Navarro Bowman, I don't know what they're going to do with him, but in case you do get rid of him, I think Tremaine Johnson can play inside linebacker, and he can play outside linebacker on the other side that Aldon Smith used to play on. And Bruce, he's very similar to Anthony Barr. He's a guy that can stand up on the edge and rush the passer, and he can drop back in coverage, or he can play inside and cover as well. And I think that's a very fair comparison. And they use Bruce Irvin in sort of the same way. On short downs or first and second downs, they go and they have him rush the passer or set the edge. And then when they need him on a third down and situation, they bring in a nickel package. They don't have to throw a linebacker out of the game. They can just bump him back into coverage and use him as a cover guy. So I think Tremaine Edmonds brings a lot to the table in terms of versatility and his ability to affect the game in multiple ways. I think the Oakland Raiders desperately need the help at the linebacker position, and so that's why I think they should take him at the number 10 spot. With the 11th pick in this mock draft, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Derwin James, the safety out of Florida State. One of the best defensive players in this draft, and in my opinion, he's probably the best safety in this in this draft. I don't want to classify Minkah Fitzpatrick as a safety because he can play a ton of different positions, but if we had to go like pure safety skills, I feel like Derwin James is the best. He can help out in the box, and he's pretty decent in coverage. I like his physicality and how he plays the game and how he hits hard and how he's like 110% football. If you ask anybody down, I think in Tallahassee is where Florida State is. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, then you can, call me out in the comment section, but pretty sure it's Tallahassee. If you ask anybody in that coaching staff, they will tell you how, focused this kid is on football, and he's 110% football. He's not letting anything get in his way. He has a dream to get to the NFL, to, you know, make an impact in the game, and that's what he does every single week. And the Dolphins are a team that needs help pretty much everywhere on the defensive side of the ball. They've talked about, you know, cutting Ndamukong Suh. Their defensive line isn't very good, but I don't think there's a defensive lineman you could say Vita Vea this high, but I still think that there's needs in that secondary. The safeties aren't very good. Rashad Jones is pretty good, but he's getting a little bit older. And then I think Michael Thomas was your free safety, and he got dealt to the Chargers last year. You could go corner right here, but I think Derwin James is your best pick because he can help you out in the running game as well. He could play linebacker in certain situations, and you desperately need some linebacker help if you are the Miami Dolphins. So I feel like you need to go out, get a guy that's going to help you a lot in a lot of different positions on your defense, and that guy is Derwin James. Moving on to the 12th pick in the draft, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Mike McGlinchey, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. Part of that outstanding Notre Dame offensive line with Quentin Nelson, obviously Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, and a couple other guys whose names are escaping me right now, but they were one of the best offensive lines in college football. Jordan Adams, their running back, saw a lot of success and was considered for like the 5th or 6th Heisman place because of his offensive line and because how good they were. Mike McGlinchey's not a guy who stands out in one particular facet. He's not an extremely good pass blocker or an extremely good run blocker. He's pretty good at everything and is a pretty strong and physical dude. Just the things with him is the inconsistency. You know, there were some games where he would absolutely dominate, and then there were some games where he would look like, you know, the 3rd or 4th best tackle in this draft class. So it's all about consistency with Mike McGlinchey, and developing that in the NFL is a very big thing, because if you're consistent, you're going to be a Pro Bowler. You're going to be, you know, if you're good enough and consistent enough, you're going to be a Hall of Famer. And I think Mike McGlinchey has all the intangibles. He's got the physicality. He's got the football IQ. He's got the awareness. He's got the strength. It's just about putting it together and the consistency with him. And the Cincinnati Bengals are a team that needs an amazing amount of help on the offensive line after letting Andrew Whitworth go last season, or not letting him go, but just letting him sign somewhere else in free agency, not drafting offensive linemen very much or very well over the last few years. You've got Russell Bodine, who's pretty nice, but besides that, you don't really have anybody on that offensive line. And so I think going out and getting Mike McGlinchey is going to really help, you know, your up-and-coming running back in Joe Mixon. Going to help Jeremy Hill, Giovanni Bernard if he's even there next year. I don't really know. And it's going to help protect Andy Dalton, which you've kind of made your franchise quarterback. So I feel like you need to go out, you need to protect your weapons, and you need to help boost that offense because it really, really struggled last year. Moving on to the number 13 pick in this mock draft, I have the Washington Redskins, taking Marcus Davenport, the edge out of UTSA. I think I said earlier in this video, or maybe that was in a different recording of this video, but edge just means somebody who can play 4-3 end or 3-4 outside linebacker. Marcus Davenport is in my opinion, he's the most freakishly athletic dude in this draft class. You could say Tremaine Edmonds, but Marcus Davenport's a little bit bigger than Tremaine Edmonds. I think he's about 6'5", he's nearing 270, he's like 267 or something like that. Ran a 4.56 40, I think is what he ran. Absolutely insane. He's one of the most physical guys in this draft class. Coming from a smaller school in UTSA, didn't really play the best talent, but when I watched him play, he absolutely dominated everybody. So that's either a sign that, oh, he's way too good to be playing UTSA, or he developed over the years and he kind of, made a name for himself. But the Washington Redskins are a team that needs a lot of help on the defensive side of the ball. Trent Murphy may not be there in free agency, so that leaves an outside linebacker spot that's open. Ryan Kerrigan's kind of getting older. You could go cornerback right here because you did trade Kendall Fuller, who was graded as your team's best defensive player, but I feel like you need to go out and you need to get help on that D-line. You need to help out Jonathan Allen, who's a very good young and up-and-coming defensive lineman from Alabama, who is an absolute steal at this exact spot in the draft. I think he got drafted 13th last year. It was like 13th or 15th, one of those picks. But he's a guy that can, I think, develop into being a pretty good 3-4 defensive end, or, 3-4 defensive end is probably where I'd put him. But Marcus Davenport can help you out rushing the passer, and he's pretty good at stopping the run. He's a very physical dude. He likes to get his hands on the offensive lineman, likes to push him back, likes to, be physical in the run game and in the pass game. And he showed that in the Senior Bowl. A lot of people were like, this is where his stock depends on how good he does in the Senior Bowl, because in a couple of drafts I had him towards the bottom, like 24, 23 or something like that, and I saw his Senior Bowl and he was like, he absolutely killed Brian O'Neill, who at one point was considered to be one of the better tackles in this class. So, Marcus Davenport proved that he could play against top-level talent, at least in the Senior Bowl, for one game, and kind of, shush the rumors about, is he good enough to play in the NFL because, he played at UTSA. But I feel like Marcus Davenport is going to help out that Redskins defense a lot. It's going to help in the run game, stopping the run game, and in getting after the pass rusher. So, Marcus Davenport right here I think is a good pick, and it may or may not be a steal, depending on how well he does, because some people have projected him as high as like number 10 or number 8. So we'll see how that plays out. With the 14th pick in this mock draft, I have the Green Bay Packers selecting Josh Jackson, a cornerback from Iowa. They really need help in that secondary and pretty much all over the place on that defense. I think they're set at running back with Aaron Jones, and the offensive line's like kind of getting a little bit older, but not by much. And you've got weapons around, Aaron Rodgers. You got guys like Devontae Adams. You've got Jordy Nelson, but Jordy's on the older end. I think you could focus on wide receiver later in this draft if you wanted to, because this draft is so deep in wide receivers. But we're here to talk about Josh Jackson. You've had a lot of struggles in the secondary. You let go Micah Hyde, who then was like second in the NFL in interceptions this year. You let Casey Hayward go a couple years ago, and he ended up being like one of the best corners in the NFL. I think he graded out as the best corner in the NFL. It was either him or Jalen Ramsey. I can't remember, but you let go two guys that were very, very big parts of teams' success on defense this last season. Casey Hayward proved that he was one of the best corners in the NFL. Micah Hyde turned into a ball hawk as soon as he left Green Bay. And Green Bay has had a really weird vibe, or I don't know what they do, but they like to draft safeties and then try and convert them to corners like Demorius Randall over the last years. Quentin Rollins, I mean, he was a corner, but they like to convert their safeties to corners, which is really weird. You might as well just go out and draft a corner. And in my opinion, Josh Jackson is the best corner in this draft. I don't like other people say Denzel Ward is better. I think Josh Jackson makes a bigger impact on the game. Denzel Ward can shut down a guy, and he can, make a one person totally irrelevant on the ball or on the other side of the ball, like he did with Indiana. He shut down their number 2 wide receiver. He shut down DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones for Michigan. He shut down some wide receivers this year, but Josh Jackson is a guy that's going to make plays on the ball. He's going to go up and he's going to try and turn the momentum in the favor of his team, and that's, I think, adds just a different level to his game, because Denzel Ward can keep up with anybody. He can run with anybody. He can defend anybody, but there's not going to be many guys that are going to be able to go up and get a ball and contest a wide receiver like Josh Jackson does, and I think the Green Bay Packers need that in their secondary after not really having much help there for the last couple years. So I think you got to go out, you got to get this guy. In my opinion, he's the best corner. It's a shame that he's fallen all the way till almost the bottom half of the first. I mean, he's still in the top half of the first round, but it's kind of sad that he's almost fallen all the way to the halfway point, because I think he's better than Denzel Ward. But I feel like most people are they value Denzel Ward's shutdown ability more than they value Josh Jackson's ball hawking ability. I would compare him to Marcus Peters in that sense, but not in terms like attitude or anything like that. But Josh Jackson at number 14 to the Packers. Let's go on to the next pick. With the 15th pick in this mock draft, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting Josh Allen, the quarterback out of Wyoming. Some people are going to say, oh my god, why do you have him falling this far? I just don't think he's that good. I mean, you could put on the combine and you could say he made the best throws. That's true. Josh Rosen had some mishaps. Lamar Jackson didn't throw very well. Baker Mayfield didn't throw particularly well, but he was pretty accurate. Just not enough spin on the ball for me for Baker. But in my opinion, Josh Allen is the most overrated player in this entire draft. The fact that people think he can go anywhere between 1 and 10 is just astounding to me. I don't think the Broncos have an affection for really big, strong arm quarterbacks, which is really weird considering the John Elway. I mean, it's not really weird, but I feel like they've got a soft spot for guys like Josh Allen because of how John Elway was when he was at Denver early in his career. And they remind me of each other a little bit, but I don't think he's that good. I think he's going to fall. I mean, maybe teams have him really high on their draft board, but the combine means nothing to me in terms of quarterback play. I would rather put on the tape, and that's what's going to tell the truth. Eyes in the sky never lie. So, you can put on the game film, and you can, put on whatever game you want to. You can put on Josh Allen against Iowa. You can put on Josh Allen against Oregon. You can put on Josh Allen against, Boise State. I don't care who it is. I don't even think he's ever played Boise State, but you get my point. He struggles against top-level talent, and sometimes he struggles against mid-level talent that's in his conference. So I don't think he should be rated that high. And the Cardinals really need a quarterback. If what's his name? I have his name up right in front of me. If Josh Allen falls all the way to 15, I feel like the Cardinals have to pull the trigger on this. They don't really, I don't think they should wait for a quarterback because some of the better ones can be taken. You never know. Mid-level quarterbacks don't tend to work out all that well. Some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, right now, were first-round picks like Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, Alex Smith. Or no, he's not one of the best, but I mean, he's pretty good. Alex Smith, Kirk Cousins, those guys. Kirk Cousins was a third-round pick, but most of the quarterback talent comes in the first round, and I think you have to target one if he falls to you. I don't think you should take a reach on a tackle or something like that here. You could get one of those later in the draft, but I feel like you have to take a top-level quarterback if you want to be able to compete in the NFL. They just, Carson Palmer just retired. None of the quarterbacks on that staff are really capable of taking over the starting job and being effective with it. So I think you have to kind of go into rebuild mode. They do have some good pieces, but a lot of their pieces are older, especially on their defense and on their offensive line. So they kind of got to go into rebuild mode. It sucks for Larry Fitzgerald, but he's probably done after this year anyway, so it doesn't really matter to him. But I feel like they got to go Josh Allen right here, get their quarterback situation straight, so then they can build around him and hopefully get back to that playoff contention level that they were at a couple years ago. With the 16th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting wide receiver Calvin Ridley out of Alabama. I have Maryland on this. I have no idea why that's there, but Calvin Ridley out of Alabama. One of the best, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in this draft class. He's extremely good. He's an extremely good route runner, very fast, very elusive. My one thing with him is he's not a very good jump ball wide receiver. There's a lot of guys in this class like, Courtland Sutton, Marcel Aitman, I don't want to call him Marcel, but Marcel Aitman, Courtland Sutton, Simi Cobbs. There's a couple other guys. Who was I thinking of? Auden Tate, Equanimeous St. Brown. You've got a lot of guys in this draft class that can go up and get the ball no matter the situation. Calvin really isn't one of those guys. I project him more of probably as a slot receiver. I don't think he ran a pretty good time in the 40-yard dash. So in his just the elusiveness and the route running and the not the physicality, but I guess the effort in which he runs routes. He runs every route at the same speed. He makes every route look the same when he comes out of his break. He's not jogging when he's running a slant, or he's not, building up and then building up speed and then gaining on a fade or anything like that. He comes out and he runs every route in the same way, and that's really confusing to some corners because, some wide receivers have tip-offs where they start slow and then they come in for a slant, or they put their hands in a certain way and then they run a fade, but Calvin Ridley runs every route the same. He was very effective at Alabama, easily their best wide receiver since Amari Cooper. And the thing with me, the Ravens really do need some talent, pretty much everywhere on that offense. They've got an offensive line. They've got some offensive line issues. But I think their main need is wide receiver. Joe Flacco's going to be gone in a few years, so you might as well just get some young talent in there for whenever the next quarterback decides to take over. You can get linemen. In my opinion, linemen, unless they're a great lineman, like Orlando Pace good, in the Heisman running lineman good, or if they're one of your bigger needs, I don't think you my thing with linemen, it's just some people rate them way too high, and then linemen end up being really big busts, or they're not as effective as some players are who are taken in the first round. You can get linemen later in the rounds, in the second, third, fourth round. It's been proven that some of the best linemen in NFL history come from the middle rounds, from rounds 1 to 3, or those are the earlier rounds. But you can get those guys second or third round, and I think you need to target a very big weapon right here in Calvin Ridley. It's going to help Joe Flacco out a lot. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to push the ball down the field. And he's going to be able to run the intermediate routes as well. Mike Williams, or what's his name? Yeah. Is that Mike Williams? Yeah. Okay. I was really confused there, but Mike Williams is a guy that's going to be able to go down the field, stretch the field for you. Brashad Perryman was supposed to be your number one wide receiver, but he hasn't really been able to stay healthy. You let Kamar Aiken go. You haven't really had any good wide receivers probably since Steve Smith retired. So if you're the Baltimore Ravens, I think you got to go out. You got to help Joe Flacco out a little bit for the time that he's got left in Baltimore, and then have Calvin Ridley in place for whenever the next quarterback decides to come into town. With the 17th overall pick, I have the the LA Chargers selecting Vita Vea, the defensive tackle out of Washington. One of the more freakishly athletic people in this class, and you may be saying he's a nose tackle. He's probably 350 pounds. He can't be a freak athlete. Oh, but he is. He ran a 5-second 40, almost a sub 540, and he's 350 pounds. You should not be able to move that much body weight that fast. And if you watch the tape, the dude's an athlete. You don't think that you should be able to move all of the weight that he has on his body as fast as he does. He runs around the field. Like, if he was smaller, he could play defense, like, in terms of weight. Like, if he was, like, you know, closer to, like, 290, 280, he could play defensive end. Like, he's that much of a freak athlete. He's that physical. The one thing I have with him is his motor questions, just, you know, because some plays I would watch and he would absolutely dominate the guy in front of him and he would kill him and get to the quarterback or get to the running back. Other times he would stop up a hole and, like, you know, because the defensive tackle's job, it's not go make every tackle. It's you got to eat up blocks, you got to stuff holes for your linebackers to make tackles, and Vita Vea does a very good job at that. But some plays he would just take off and, you know, just not really be I don't know, he just wouldn't be effective. He wouldn't really help his team out very much. He would just kind of stand there, and that's, you know, that's kind of expected out of a guy who's 350 pounds. But if you're going to be a first round draft pick, you got to be able to play pretty much every down, unless they, you know, go sub packages and they take you out so they can, you know, rush the passer. But Vita Vea is one of the more safer picks in this draft, in my opinion. I would probably put him up there with Bradley Chubb and Minkah Fitzpatrick as people with the lowest bust potential. But he's a very good player. He plays with a lot of physicality, a lot of heart, a lot of passion. And the Chargers are a team that needs some defensive line help, especially on the interior, or not really on the exterior. They've got Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa, who are two of the best defensive ends in the NFL. They need help on the interior. Vita Vea played nose tackle, but I think he could play a 3 or a 1 technique. It just depends on you know, whatever scheme they're running. I know they are running a 4-3. They switched to a 4-3. So Vita Vea could play defensive tackle. He's athletic enough to do it. He's big enough. He's strong enough. He just doesn't have to play nose tackle. He can play whatever defensive tackle interior position he wants to. And I think he's going to help out that defensive line a lot. He's going to help out Denzel Perryman and Jartavius Brown, two guys who kind of need to come into their own and step up and start making some plays, at least in the run game. So, because they weren't a very good run defense, but they got after the pass rusher, or hitting it after the pass rusher. They got after the passer a lot this last season, so I feel like if you can get a guy on the interior that can plug up some holes, take up some blocks, and you can let your linebackers roam free, then I think that's going to help with the defense a lot. With the 18th overall pick, I have the Seattle Seahawks selecting Mike Hughes, a cornerback out of UCF. A guy who I don't think is as good as a lot of people have said he is. He really got exposed by Anthony Miller in the 2 games that they played this year. And he just, you know, or I don't think he really even covered Anthony Miller, which is kind of concerning that one of the best corners in the draft isn't covering one of the best wide receivers in the draft. So, to me, Mike Hughes is a guy that could help out this Seattle Seahawks defense a lot. Obviously, after cutting Richard Sherman and letting some other guys go, you know, they're obviously trying to get younger. They're trying to rebuild. And I feel like Mike Hughes is one of the guys that they should go after and that they should target. He's a guy that could come in and make an immediate impact. You got guys like Shaq Griffin, Justin Coleman. Mike Hughes is a guy who could play outside corner for you. In my opinion, I don't think that you can, you know, run a 3-corner system with the 3 guys that they have. They could use one more corner, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if they go and they get Mike Hughes in this draft, you know, that'd be a great pickup for them. They could start Shaq Griffin and him on the outside, and then Justin Coleman in the nickel, or put Shaq Griffin in the nickel. I'm not really sure what you do with that. That's up to the Seahawks to do, but I feel like Mike Hughes is a guy who could come in and make an immediate impact. They could also go offensive lineman right here. I wouldn't be surprised if they took Will Hernandez or Orlando Brown or something like that to boost the offensive line, or if they took a running back, because that is something the Seattle Seahawks would do. But in my opinion, you should probably go Mike Hughes just to boost up that secondary and help rebuild it to the former, like, you know, status of LOB that it was. I'm not saying that Mike Hughes is any guy is good like Brandon Brown or Richard Sherman or Earl Thomas or Cam Chancellor. I'm just saying if they're in a rebuild mode, they should try and focus huge positions in need. And after letting Richard Sherman go and him signing with the 49ers, I feel like you have to do that in Mike Hughes. With the 19th pick in this mock draft, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Daron Payne, the defensive tackle out of Alabama. The interior defensive line for the Dallas Cowboys has been one of the struggles on their team. A lot of people say secondary as well, but I want to give them time to develop. They've got guys like Chidobe Awuzie, Anthony Brown, Jordan Lewis, Xavier Woods, Byron Jones. I don't want to necessarily say, oh, they need secondary people, because then they're just going to keep drafting corners and safeties and missing out on integral parts of their team, like linebackers, defensive linemen, offensive linemen, wide receivers, if they just keep focusing on defensive backs. So I feel like you need to go out, you need to get a guy that's a perfect size for your scheme. David Irving's a little long and he's a little tall. He'd be better suited at defensive end, I think. I wouldn't really necessarily put him at defensive tackle, but Daron Payne is a big physical guy who's going to get up in the offensive lineman's grill. He's a very good run stopper. He's athletic enough to use, finesse moves and get after the pass rusher, and he's one of the more complete defensive tackles in this draft. He's a very good athlete too. You saw him catch that touchdown in the game against Clemson. I think that was the Sugar Bowl. I'm pretty sure. I don't even know which bowls or what anymore. I just know that there's like the semifinals and the finals. But the touchdown really doesn't mean much, but it just shows that he's a very good athlete, along with being, the big man that I think he's about 320 pounds. I'm pretty sure. So, he's a big physical guy. He can get up. He can hold blocks. He can stop up gaps, and he can let some of your linebackers run, like Anthony Hitchens, Jalen Smith, Sean Lee if he gets healthy and is able to play for the next couple years. But I feel like Daron Payne is a guy that you got to go after, especially with, they do have some wide receiver issues. Cole Beasley isn't terribly great, but he's one of Dak Prescott's favorite targets. Dez Bryant is the most overrated player in the NFL, and I can't stand him at all. Sorry about that. But and then you've got Terrence Williams. I think that you need to go out and maybe target a wide receiver later in the draft, maybe a Michael Gallup type in the 3rd or 4th round. But right here, I think you can't miss on a defensive tackle or a linebacker here. A linebacker would be a very good pick, but Daron Payne I think is the guy that they should go after, and I think they will target him at the 19th pick. Let's move on to pick number 20. With the 20th overall pick in the NFL draft, in my mock draft, I have the Detroit Lions taking Darius Geis, the running back out of LSU. One of the better running backs in this class after Ronald Jones's absolutely horrible and shocking combine. I'd probably put Darius Geis as my number 2 running back. I don't think that there's guys that bring versatility to the game. Obviously, Saquon Barkley is one of the most versatile players in this draft, with his ability, but Darius Geis is different. He's a very physical runner, but he's not built like a physical runner. He's only about 215 pounds, 212 pounds, but he runs like Marshawn Lynch. Like, he likes to get up in between the tackles and bulldoze his ways through some people, but he can also stretch the field and get up on the outside with, power runs or stretches and pitches and all that stuff. So I think he can help out the Detroit Lions. Geez, I'm stuttering all over the place, but I think he can help out the Detroit Lions a lot. They've really been lacking a guy who can do both things, I guess. They've got guys like Theo Riddick and Amir Abdullah who have been just subjugated to receiving back roles because they really haven't had a running back who's effective enough in between the tackles and outside the tackles. I think Darius Geis is your next best bet. If you want to go another position here, you could go offensive line or edge rusher, and pick up somebody later in the draft like a Rashad Penny or a Nick Chubb. You could do that too, or you could take a guy who I think is one of the better running backs in this draft in Darius Geis. Obviously, Nick Chubb has knee concerns, but he kind of washed those out at the combine, but that's just the combine. It's not, a full game. And he kind of got him and Sony Michel splitting time really did help his knee out, because if he had to carry a full load, I don't think he would. I think he probably would have got injured again if he had to take another full load, like a full running back workload or something like that. But Darius Geis at the number 20 pick, I feel like is going to be the best fit for the Lions. He's a guy who's going to get up in between the tackles for him. He's a guy that's going to do it all. He can catch passes pretty well too. That LSU offense is very weird. I don't know really what it is, what Ed Orgeron is running down there, but they can use him in pretty much any way they want to. He's fast enough. He ran a sub 4.5. I think Amir Abdullah ran a pretty fast time, but if he can remain their scat back, I like him better than Theo Riddick. I don't know why the Lions choose to like Theo Riddick better, but I honestly like Amir Abdullah better. If they get Darius Geis, he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to pound the rock. He can be a 3-down running back for them if that's what they need. But yeah, Darius Geis at number 20. With the 21st overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Rashaan Evans, a linebacker out of Alabama. One of the more athletic linebackers in this draft. He's got a very good build and a very good profile athletically. About 6'3", 240 pounds, a very good size coming into the NFL. Not undersized or anything like that. He's a very good blitzer, very good from the middle of the field. He's pretty decent in zone, but I'd say his strength is in the run game. He's very good at stopping the run. We saw that in the game against Georgia. None of the running backs really just broke out and had a ton of, yards. They didn't really have, they weren't very effective, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. They weren't very effective. Rashaan Evans is a very good quarterback spy. He can, eye the quarterback and make sure that he doesn't, get outside the pocket or anything like that. And he's very good in coverage over the middle. The Buffalo Bills need, linebacker help. They need help on the defense in general, and I think on the offense too. After trading Tyrod Taylor, they definitely need some help there. But I think if they're going to go after anybody on the defense side of the ball at this position of the draft, it should be linebacker. Zach Brown left them last season to go to the Redskins. Preston Brown has kind of stepped up and filled that role, but not quite. And I think Rashaan Evans would be a guy that could play inside linebacker or outside linebacker since they are in a 4-3, and he could help out a lot for that team. A team that made the playoffs last year, but struggled a little bit in that game on the defense side of the ball in terms of like stopping the run, because Leonard Fournette and Blake Bortles were pretty effective. Blake Bortles was effective running the ball. That's crazy. But I think, Rashaan Evans could get in there. He could help you. He's pretty good in coverage. He's kind of like a do-it-all linebacker. He's not just outstanding in one spot. He's very well-rounded, and he's a very good athlete. And I think he'd help out that Buffalo secondary front seven, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's not whatever you want to call it. It's a very technical term, but he'd help out that Buffalo front seven a lot. With the 22nd overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Lamar Jackson, a quarterback from Louisville. He's one of the more electric players in this draft, a former Heisman Trophy winner. Rarely ever do you see a draft where you have two Heisman Trophy winners, obviously Baker Mayfield being this year's Heisman Trophy winner, and Lamar Jackson being last year's. One of the best running quarterbacks we've seen in the history of the NFL and in college football. Very similar to Mike Vick. That's the fairest comparison that you can draw up. There's not really another quarterback that can do what Lamar Jackson can do besides Michael Vick, and Michael Vick did it at an extremely high level for the Philadelphia Eagles. Very effectively for the Eagles after, his arrest and the whole dogfighting incident and stuff like that. But Lamar Jackson has been questioned whether he wants to switch to wide receiver or not. Bill Polian telling him that he should probably do that is absolutely insane. He's a pure thrower of the ball. It's just his mechanics that are going to need a little bit of work. His lower half is the most concerning part to me. Just the fact that his base was so narrow, he wasn't getting any push with the ball. He can still fling the ball about, 60 yards down the field, 50 yards down the field, just with that narrow base. If he could put some lower, if he gets some lower half action, lower half power with his legs and his hip twist and all that stuff, I think he could probably throw the ball just as far as Josh Allen would. So Lamar Jackson, I know people are going to compare it to Tyrod Taylor only because of their build and I don't want to say it, but people are just going to say that because they're black and they're both mobile quarterbacks who like to get out of the pocket and run. But Tyrod Taylor is more of a situational runner. He's a guy that wants to pass first but run second. Lamar Jackson's definitely a run first guy, but I think he's developed over last season, and as he'll come into the NFL, he'll develop a pass first mindset, which is, what quarterbacks are supposed to do. But Tyrod Taylor has way less arm talent than Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. Lamar Jackson has better, he's got a bigger arm, he's got a more accurate arm down the field. Tyrod Taylor's not that good down the field, but he's going to make some decisions and he's going to do some things on the football field that a lot of people are going to question, but it's going to end up paying off. You're going to see Lamar, he's going to scramble, he's going to try and get out of the pocket. He's going to have to get down in this NFL because people are going to try and come and take his head off, but I think Lamar Jackson could be very effective in that Buffalo offense, and they do really need a quarterback after dealing Tyrod Taylor to the Browns. So that's Lamar Jackson at the 22nd spot. With the 23rd overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Los Angeles Rams selecting Arden Key, an edge from LSU. As I said earlier in the video, edge is just somebody who I think can play 4-3 end or 3-4 outside linebacker. And in the Rams scheme, they run a 3-4, and I think Arden Key is the perfect fit for that system. He's about 6'6", 260 or 70 pounds, I'm pretty sure. An extreme athlete. He's got a very big build, very big profile athletically. And he did pretty well at the combine. Just the thing that a lot of people have questions with Arden Key about is very similar to Reuben Foster, off the field issues, a little bit of health concerns, but not that many. It's just more of his attitude and his off the field antics. He was a pretty good player for LSU, and I really like him. A lot of people think that Harold Landry may be the best fit right here, but personally, in terms of the ability to stop the run and to stop the run and get after the pass rusher, I feel like Arden Key brings the most to the table. He's a very physical guy. He likes to get up in the lineman's face. He likes to be physical with them. He doesn't like to just speed rush around the outside and try and get to the quarterback. He's very good at setting the edge, and he did so at LSU. He had a very productive freshman and sophomore season, and then towards his junior year, towards the start into the middle of his junior year, he kind of fell off a little bit and the production wasn't there. But you could say the same about Harold Landry, a guy who led the nation in sacks as a junior and then came back as a senior and only had like 4 or 5, I think, but he was injured. So that'd be my concern with Harold Landry. But I feel like Arden Key has the most potential. He has the best ability and the most room to grow, in my opinion. So I think that his development and how much room he still has left to improve is going to play a very big factor in his development. And I feel like the Rams, after I think, did they release Robert Quinn or did they trade him? I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I know that Robert Quinn is no longer on they traded him to the Dolphins. So Robert Quinn is no longer on the team anymore, and because he really didn't fit their scheme. But Arden Key is a guy who's athletic enough to cover in zone and to understand the game, because in a 4-3, or not in a 4-3, but in a 3-4 rather, you have your outside linebackers have to be able to cover and rush the passer. Arden Key, I think, possesses a lot more athletic ability than Harold Landry to do that, so that's why I have him here at the number 23 spot. With the 24th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting DJ Moore, a wide receiver out of Maryland. A guy who kind of flew under my radar towards the middle in the start, or towards the start in the middle of the season, and then towards the end of the season. I think he played Michigan, and I saw him a little bit in action. I said, wow, this guy's really good, and then I, was formulating some rankings and some opinions on some guys, and his name kept coming up a lot. A lot of people had him in their top 5 for wide receivers, so I decided to check him out, and I think that he's one of the better wide receivers in this draft class. And the Carolina Panthers are in dire need of a wide receiver. They obviously have other positions in need among the defensive line and in the defensive secondary, as they just traded, Daryl Worley. But DJ Moore is going to be a guy that's going to add a lot to that offense. They don't really have a vertical threat who can stretch it down the field. They don't really have a guy who is good at the screen and intermediate routes. They do have Devin Funchess, who's a guy who can go up and get a ball. He's more of a jump ball receiver, converted tight end from Michigan, go blue. DJ Moore's going to be a guy that can do pretty much anything that you need him to. He can run a screen, he can block pretty well, he can go over the middle, he can go deep. For his size, I think he's only about 6 foot, but he goes up and gets the ball like he's really like Cortland Sutton, like he's 6'4", 6'5", or something. He's a very physical receiver for his size too. He's built like a running back, honestly, but just with longer arms and a better reach and more athletic ability. But he's a guy that I think is one of the better wide receivers in this draft, as I said earlier. And I think it was funny because the Carolina Panthers posted a picture of all of the top wide receivers from the draft class. It was like 4 pictures, and it was like Christian Kirk, DJ Moore, DJ Chark, and then Calvin Ridley or something like that. It was some of those people. I think it was in the picture. And then they said, which wide receivers do you want us to get? Leave your like A, B, C, or D or whatever. And Cam Newton just said, how about all of them? So you can tell that guy really needs some weapons, and he really wants some weapons around him. And I think that's why their offense struggled last year. They like most of their passes, Christian McCaffrey caught 80 freaking passes, and not a lot of them were downfield. They were mostly screens and like angle routes and outs and slants and all that stuff. So they need to be able to move the ball down the field vertically through the air, not just on the running game. And Christian McCaffrey being pushed into the starting role, Jonathan Stewart's leaving, Christian McCaffrey taking over, I think is a good thing for them. They're just going to need to go out and they're going to need to get a wide receiver in the draft. I think DJ Moore is a first round talent, like a lot of these guys, but a lot of people say Cortland Sutton would fall here. He's not the type of receiver that I think they want. They already had that experiment with Kelvin Benjamin, and that didn't really work out that well. Devin Funchess seemed to be, one of the better offensive players for their team last year, and I think they should go out and they should get a guy that they can partner with him. They traded for Torrey Smith, but he hasn't really done much over the last 3-4 years in the NFL, so he'll more than likely be a third option, and DJ Moore would be a very good second option on the other side of Devin Funchess in that Carolina offense. With the 25th pick in this mock draft, I have the Tennessee Titans taking Jair Alexander, the cornerback out of Louisville. One of my favorite cornerbacks in the draft. I know he's towards the later rounds. I think he should go higher. There's a reason that he won't go higher, in my opinion. It's because of his tape last year. He only played about 6 games, and I think that's going to scare some coaches off a little bit because he had a super productive junior season in which I don't think he led the nation in interceptions, but he had like 6 or 7, which is very good for a college season when you only play, like 10 or 12 games depending on your ranking. And his team was pretty good, so he played, he had about an interception every other game, or an interception and a half every other game, something like that. So he was super productive at the cornerback position, one of the better ball hawks in this draft class. He's a little bit on the smaller side, about 5'10", but that doesn't really worry me all that much. There's a lot of corners that are, 5'10", 5'11", that compete with some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So he had also an outstanding combine running a 4.38. He looked very fluid in drills. He looks like a very just, natural athlete. Nothing looks too hard for him out there, and that's what you look for in the drills. You want the drills to look easy. You want the movements to look fluid, and he did that, very well at the combine, proving to everybody that, hey, I may have only played 6 games and I may have been injured, but I've still got it. I've still got that juice. I can still go out there and play. I can still move very well. I can still compete, and he showed that very well at the combine. And the Tennessee Titans, in my opinion, are a team that I think needs a cornerback. The Logan Ryan experiment hasn't really worked out that well. Adoree Jackson was a pretty good slot corner, but he got exposed in that wild card game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Tyreek Hill just kind of ran all over the place on him. They don't really have another cornerback besides that. I mean, they have a guy, the LaShawn Sims. I think one of their corners is a free agent, and I know you have a lot of other concerns among that team. Outside linebacker is a concern. You've got offensive line needs that may need to be addressed. You've got some safety, some back end issues. But Jair Alexander, if he falls to this spot, I feel like will be one of the steals of the draft. I know you drafted a cornerback in the first round last year. In my opinion, Adoree Jackson was more of a second or third round player. Between the second and third round, he shouldn't have been taken in the first. Jair Alexander is a guy that I believe should be taken in the first, and I think he'll fall to the Tennessee Titans. Logan Ryan, like I said earlier, Logan Ryan really hasn't worked out. You kind of paid him a lot of money not to do a whole lot. He's not a very effective corner. Then you got obviously Adoree Jackson, who's more of a specialist return guy. He's a speedy outside corner. I think he plays better outside than he does in the nickel. In the nickel, it has to be a different type of guy. You have to be able to move outside and inside. And with, I think Adoree Jackson just has boundary corner speed. He's more of a straight line guy. He's not necessarily laterally or, footwork wise as fast as some of the other wide receivers in the NFL. So Jaire Alexander, I think you can maybe plug him into the nickel, or you can plug him into the outside. He can pretty much play anywhere. He's got the speed, he's got the size to play nickel, and I think he could be very effective in that Tennessee Titans defense. With the 26th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Atlanta Falcons selecting Isaiah Wynn, an offensive guard / tackle out of Georgia. One of the more versatile and better linemen in this draft class. He played a very good game in the national championship. Didn't really let either Deshaun Hand or Daron Payne really overpower him or anything like that. And Alabama's defensive line is notorious for having guys that just will absolutely overpower you. And I don't think he really let that happen. Maybe a couple plays, but it's not like he just got beat up the entire game. And he played some very tough competition, some very pro-ready defensive linemen throughout the entire year. And he really did hold his own. He really was a very good lineman. And he's versatile. He can play guard and he can play tackle. He played a mixture of both throughout his the last 2 seasons. And for the Atlanta Falcons, you've got a guy in Jake Matthews who hasn't really been, the franchise left tackle that you thought he was going to be. And you've got a guy like Andy Levitre at the left guard spot who he's on the older side of 30, or I don't really guess there is. There's a higher side of 30, but he's about 33, or I don't really know. I think he's about like 33 to 35. I would guess. I don't really memorize people's ages. I just ballpark it most of the time. But he's an older guy, and maybe you could bring in Isaiah Wynn and you could start him right away, get him some development, or you could sit him under Andy Levitre for a year, let him learn the NFL game and just in practices and in scrimmages and in preseason, all that stuff. So I don't really know what you would do, or like if you would start him right away at the guard spot or at the tackle spot. Maybe they've found a liking for Jake Matthews and they don't want to get rid of him, or they pay him or something like that in the coming off seasons. But Isaiah Wynn, I think, is a guy that they should look to draft. He's a guy that can replace pretty much any position on the offensive line in terms of guard and tackle spots, preferably the left side of the line, but most linemen are able to switch from side to side. So if Ryan Schrader is a guy that's kind of starting to fall off a little bit, you could play him at the right tackle. He's just a guy that you can plug and play pretty much anywhere on the offensive line. A lot of people would say defensive tackle is another one of their needs. I don't really see it that much. I think Grady Jarrett's a very good defensive tackle. I don't know if you need to go out and you need to draft another one. I'd say your next biggest need is probably like free safety or corner, to get a guy on the other side of Desmond Trufant, or to get a guy next to Keanu Neal to help them out a little bit. But I don't think there's any really in that range that I think are worth it. I think they need to get a guy that's going to help their offensive line. It's going to help Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, Matt Ryan. It's going to help that elite powered offense succeed even more. With the 27th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the New Orleans Saints selecting Hayden Hurst, the tight end out of South Carolina. One of the more athletic tight ends in this draft class. This draft class is one of the heavier tight end classes I think we've seen in a while. Last year we had Evan Ingram, O.J. Howard. I almost said O.J. Simpson. O.J. Howard and who's the other guy? David Njoku for the Browns, all of which got drafted in the first round. David Njoku may have been a reach, but he turned out to be a pretty decent rookie tight end. And this class is even more loaded. You've got guys like Hayden Hurst, Dallas Goedert, Mike Gesicki, Troy Fumagalli, and you've got obviously Mark Andrews from Oklahoma, who is one of Baker Mayfield's favorite targets. All of those guys could have a possibility to go in the first round. I think probably besides Fumagalli, every one of those guys has potential to go in the first round. Mark Andrews could, even though I think he's more of a second round guy. Dallas Goedert, I think he plays at a smaller school, so he might be able to go later and fall to a team and then end up being one of the better tight ends from this class. But Hayden Hurst, I think, brings the most to the table. He is a little bit older because he did play professional baseball, and then he decided that he wanted to go back into college and, declare for the NFL draft. And he's one of the better athletes in this class. I know, not Troy Fumagalli, but Mike Gesicki ran a 4.55 or something like that at the combine. Speed isn't everything at the tight end position. That's a very impressive time to run. But Hayden Hurst did run pretty well. I think he ran like a 4.6 or a low 4.7. Yeah, I think it was probably like a 4.6. And then he was really good in the vertical and in the drills, and he showed that on the field. He is a very good tight end. He's very good in that South Carolina kind of, mix of a pro style and a West Coast scheme. Sometimes he likes to carry the ball. They give it to him on dives or sweeps, and he can, run the ball. He's very good after the catch. He's got very good hands, and I think that he's going to be a great addition to that New Orleans Saints offense. They haven't really had a good tight end since Jimmy Graham left. They've got Josh Hill, they've got Colby Fleener, but neither of those guys, Colby Fleener's on the older side, and Josh Hill really hasn't developed into, you know, a starting quality tight end. I think Hayden Hurst is going to be a guy that can come in and start day one. I think one of the things that offense was missing was probably some O-line pieces and definitely a tight end. A tight end is a very crucial part of any offense. As you can see, you know, by the Eagles, they've got Zach Ertz. The Patriots have Gronk. You know, the Panthers have Greg Olsen. The Chiefs have Travis Kelce. Some of the tight ends, tight ends in the NFL are some of the best receivers on their team. And Hayden Hurst is a guy that I think can come in. He's got a very good athletic profile, like I've said earlier, and he's very good at catching the ball. Obviously, you have to be if you want to be a tight end, but I think he could come in, he could start day one, and he could add just another level to that Saints offense. It's already super dynamic, and I think he can make them a little bit better in the pass game. I know that sounds crazy for Drew Brees being their quarterback, but he's just going to add another target, another weapon to that arsenal, and I think that's going to help them a lot. With the 28th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Ronnie Harrison, a safety out of Alabama. This class is absolutely loaded with safeties. You got a lot of good guys. You've got guys like Derwin James, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who I think projects better as a safety. Obviously, Ronnie Harrison, you know, this pick that I have right here. And then you've got guys that could go in the second and third round. You got Deshaun Elliott, Justin Reed, who's Eric Reed's younger brother, who's a very good player at Stanford. And you've got Jesse Bates out of Wake Forest, Armani Watts, Kaiser White. You've got a lot of good safeties in this draft class. A lot of guys who I think can be super productive at the next level. And the Steelers are a team that I believe needs safety help. Mike Mitchell is getting older, and he's not as good as he once was like 2-3 years ago. And Sean Davis absolutely cannot cover worth anything. You could draft a linebacker right here, but I think you'd be better taking a linebacker maybe in the second or third round, targeting a guy like, you know, if he's still available, Leighton Vander Esch. You could go after a Sky Moore in the later rounds. It's all up to you, but I think safety is one of the positions they should go and target. I think Ronnie Harrison brings a lot to the table. He's a guy who can play in the box and he can cover. It reminded me a lot of Landon Collins and Clinton Dix when they were at Bama. Kind of a lazy comparison because they both went there, but that's who he kind of reminds me of. A guy who's going to be able to fly around all over the field, because that's what that Bama defense is about. They're all about going around to the ball, making plays, trying to do anything they can to help their team win. A very unselfish player. Doesn't really have a lot of lapses in coverage, but I think he's a very good player. And like I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that needs help in that defensive secondary. It's probably their biggest weakness. Their offensive line, their offense is set, besides quarterback, for the next 3-4 years. So I feel like if they can go out and bolster up that defense and help out the offense by getting, it sounds weird, but they're going to help out the offense a lot by getting guys on the defense that are going to help. That puts a lot less weight on the shoulders of the offense, on Big Ben, AB, and Lev Bell, and that offensive line, and Jesse James. Puts a lot less weight on those guys, and it, you know, proves that the defense can carry their own weight, and maybe they'll be able to win some games, because they didn't really win a lot of games. The defense did for that Pittsburgh Steelers team last season or in previous seasons. They've got to get back to their, their not their steel curtain form, but they've got to get back to a defensive threat form if they want to be able to compete in the playoffs against a team like the Patriots, or, you know, any other team that could challenge them in the next couple of years in that AFC Championship game. With the 29th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Courtland Sutton, the wide receiver out of SMU. In my opinion, he's probably the third or fourth best wide receiver in this draft class, but I feel like he has more potential or just better ability than some of the other guys. Anthony Miller is my second ranked wide receiver. I mean, I shouldn't be giving that away. I'm coming out with a wide receiver rankings video soon, but Anthony Miller is my second ranked wide receiver, but I don't think that he'll go in the first round, or maybe he'll probably go in the second or third, mainly just because of the school that he played at in the smaller division. But Courtland Sutton, a lot of people have been riding this guy's hype train, and I really wasn't at first, and then I saw some of his tape. I just knew his name, and I was putting him high in my mock drafts just because, you know, I saw a couple games, but then I looked more at his tape, and I saw that this guy was really legit. He's a red zone threat, if nothing else. He can go up and get pretty much any ball that you throw to him. He's about 6'5". His frame is very good. He's a very good athlete for how big he is. I feel like the Jacksonville Jaguars struggled at wide receiver last season with Allen Robinson not being able to play, and they had some slot guys that came out, and they were pretty good. They had guys like Keelan Cole, D.D. Westbrook, Marquise Lee, and they didn't really have that one go up and get it type player. I mean, they had Mercedes Lewis, but they didn't really have a guy that if they needed a first down or if they needed a touchdown that they could go up and throw it to, mainly because they were a running team. But I feel like Courtland Sutton is going to add a lot to that Jaguars offense. He would be probably opposite of Allen Robinson if he's retained, but I'm thinking that he will be. But if he's retained, he could be opposite of Allen Robinson, and then you could play Marquise Lee in the slot. I feel like that would be your best bet. You got two big body, go get it type wide receivers on the outside, and then you've got a really good route technician, rather speedy receiver on the inside. I feel like that would be a good move for the Jacksonville Jaguars, just boosting up the offense. The defense could use a little bit of help just in the linebacker department, maybe drafting a new middle linebacker, but I don't think there's any right here at this spot that they should reach for, even though, you know, there are good linebackers available, but I just don't think that. I think they're going to try and ride out Paul Posluszny's career as a Jaguar and just let him, you know, kind of fizzle out, maybe draft a linebacker in the next couple years when there's a little bit. I think there's a pretty good class for linebackers this year, but I feel like they could get one later. Wide receiver, a lot of these guys are going to be gone, so I feel like you just need to add some weapons around Blake Bortles, try and build around him. I would say tight end right here, but the best tight end in my opinion in the draft was already taken, so I feel like if you can get Courtland Sutton at 29, then that's probably a steal, because a lot of people have him more in the top half of the first round, so that's where I think Courtland Sutton's going to go, 29 to the Jaguars. Moving on to the 30th overall pick in this mock draft, I have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Will Hernandez, an offensive guard out of UTEP, one of the best interior linemen in this draft, one of the best run blockers in this draft, and was a big success, or a big reason why Aaron Jones had a lot of success at UTEP and why he ended up being drafted and getting a lot of playing time this season for the Green Bay Packers. Like I said, one of the best run blockers in this draft, one of the more physical linemen in this draft. I think he put up the #1 bench press reps for this combine, for this draft. Or this class at least. And the Minnesota Vikings are a team that needs help on the interior offensive line. Their offensive linemen are older. They're either older or they're really young. So it's kind of a weird mix. You've got veterans in there like Joe Berger. I can't remember who the other guys are. They're slipping my name right now. Or no, they're not slipping my name. Their names are slipping me right now. But Will Hernandez is going to be a guy that's going to be able to come in, start day one for you, and he's going to add a lot to that run game. You drafted Dalvin Cook last year in hopes that he would become your franchise running back, and he looked great through the games that he played. Sadly, he was injured, and Latavius Murray had to step in, and we really saw that, you know, the offensive line really was one of the struggles for this team. We saw that also in the NFC Championship game. The Eagles defensive line just absolutely killed Case Keenum, and it doesn't matter who your quarterback's going to be next year, whether it's, you know, Kirk Cousins, whether it's Case Keenum, whether it's Teddy Bridgewater, whether it's Sam Bradford, whoever it is, we don't know. Whether you draft one, I don't know if you would draft one here, but whether you draft one or not, you're going to have to protect him, and I feel like offensive line is one of their biggest needs, like I've said throughout this little take right here. But Will Hernandez is going to be a guy he's very physical. His strength is run blocking, but I feel like he's going to be okay in the pass game. He's a little stiff, not as mobile as some of the other guys, like Colton Miller or Brian O'Neill, but those guys are tackles. Will Hernandez is an absolute brawler. He gets up there. He's one of the most physical run blockers in this draft, one of the most physical run blockers I've ever seen. So running behind him would be a smart idea if you're Dalvin Cook next year in that Vikings offense. So Will Hernandez, I think, is going to really help boost that offensive line, boost their productivity, help Dalvin Cook grow as a player, and help him, you know, gain some yards. Hopefully he can have a very good bounce back season, Dalvin Cook that is, have a very good bounce back season and help carry that Vikings team to another, you know, NFC Championship game appearance, maybe even the Super Bowl. With the 31st overall pick in this mock draft, I have the New England Patriots selecting Orlando Brown, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma, a guy who struggled a lot at the combine, put up one of the slower times in combine history at like a 4.9, or was it like a 5 something? It was like a 5.85. I'm pretty sure a very, very slow 40. Only put up 14 reps on the bench, which, you know, Saquon Barkley almost got double that. Or I think he did. Yeah, he doubled that and won. So he put up 29. God, that's absolutely insane. But Orlando Brown, you can see his strength in the game is a lot better than it is tested. You know, he's got better game strength than he does just, you know, straight up doing it on a bench. He pushes guys around. He's big. He's physical. The one thing with him is just his mobility. That's a pretty big concern for me, especially playing he's come out and said that he wants to play the left tackle position, and I don't know if that's going to be possible with his mobility at the NFL level. His hips are pretty stiff, his knees are pretty stiff, and he doesn't really move that fast, so I think he'd be better suited as a right tackle. He's a much better run blocker than he is a pass blocker, so I feel like, you know, if he would have played right tackle at Oklahoma, he'd be projected as one of the higher picks in this draft. In terms of tackles, he'd probably be up towards the top half of the second round, but with that being said, I think that not the Orlando Browns, that the New England Patriots are in need of a left tackle. Nate Solder's getting up there in age, and their right tackle, I don't even know really who it is. Oh, it's Marcus Cannon. Marcus Cannon's kind of getting up there in age, so maybe you could come draft Orlando Brown. I mean, you know, edge rusher is another position that you could draft. but there's not really a lot of guys in the NFL or in college that would fit into the hybrid defense scheme that they've got going in New England. It's a very complex scheme, and I think they could stand to pick up a guy later in the draft like a Dorrance Armstrong or, a Harold Landry or who else? Duke, I think his name's Ejiofor, I think it's Ejiofor. Duke Ejiofor out of Wake Forest. There's a lot of guys you can go out and that you can target later in the draft that are pass rushers, because this class is pass rusher deep. It's not necessarily tackle deep, and tackle is a position I think they need. You could move him to guard, but I don't know if that would be beneficial to him. I mean, your guards are pretty good. You've got Joe Thuney and, oh my gosh, what's his name? Shaq Mason. Shaq Thompson plays for the Panthers. But, I mean, tackle is a position that you need. You could sit him under Nate Solder or Marcus Cannon for a couple years, let him develop, and then he could come and start in and be a tackle. For the next generation of New England quarterback, whoever that is. It's probably not going to be Tom Brady, but it's definitely not going to be Tom Brady. But, just get him to develop, because I think he's going to need just a lot of work on his game in general. Just, mobility, techniques, footwork, all that stuff. Besides that, I think he's a pretty good pick here. He falls because of his combine, honestly, and I think if he falls this far, it would be a steal for any team to pick him up, because I think he's going to be a very good tackle in the NFL. With the last pick in this mock draft, at least for the first round, this isn't going to be like a 7-round mock draft or anything like that, but for the last pick in this first round mock draft, I have the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles selecting Malik Jefferson, a linebacker out of Texas. The Eagles have a huge need at the linebacker position. Nigel Bradham's a free agent. Jordan Hicks has proven that he can't really stay healthy. Michael Kendricks is a very good linebacker, and I like him a lot. One of my favorite players in the NFL. But Malik Jefferson's going to be a guy, a former Texas linebacker. Well, I guess he's former now, technically, but a former Texas linebacker. I think he played with Jordan Hicks his freshman or sophomore season, or it would be his freshman season. Played with Jordan Hicks his freshman season, and he got to see him, grow and develop at Texas, become one of the, premier linebackers in their program's history. And Malik Jefferson has done the same. He's a very good sideline-to-sideline player. Has great speed for how big he is. He's about 6'3", 240. He ran a pretty fast 40. I think he ran in the he might have ran in the low 5s, mid 6s. He definitely didn't run a 7. I'm just gonna guess and say the 6s, the 4 6s, because I don't really have a good knowledge. Not a good knowledge, but I just don't remember what time he ran exactly. But Malik Jefferson's gonna be a guy, and he could come in and start day 1. A lot of these first round picks can start day 1. I know I've said that a lot throughout the last portion of this video, but the Eagles, one of their biggest need is linebackers. They also need help in the defensive backfield and among the offensive tackle positions. But besides that, I think they're pretty set. They could make a repeat at the Super Bowl if Carson Wentz is healthy and has a season like he did last year, but that's asking for a lot after a dude who absolutely just tore up his knee last season. But Malik Jefferson, one of the better linebackers in this draft class. He's probably one of my favorite players in this draft class. I really have a liking for him. He runs sideline to sideline very fast, pretty physical in the run game. He's what you would call a gap shooter. Him and Tremaine Johnson, he's a cornerback for the Rams. Tremaine Edmonds from Virginia Tech play very similarly, but Tremaine Edmonds I just think has a lot more potential, a lot more ability to grow and develop. Malik Jefferson is his coverage is the thing that I think needs the most work, and his physicality with offensive linemen I think needs a little bit more work too. But besides that, I think he's one of the better linebackers in this draft class. Probably top 3 for me, or probably top 4, definitely top 5. Leighton Vander Esch would probably be my 5th, but Rashaan Evans is a little bit on the older side, but and Malik Jefferson's a little bit younger, so that would, depending on how you view that could give one or the other an edge. But Malik Jefferson right here, I feel like would come and fill an immediate hole. He'd be, a very good outside linebacker in this scheme. You could play, you may be able to let Nigel Bradham go, not sign him and, free up some cap room for yourselves, and then play Malik Jefferson at the outside linebacker position, or you could draft him, move Jordan Hicks to outside, and then play him on the inside. I think it'd be better if Malik played outside, but it all depends on whatever the, Philadelphia Eagles want to do with that. But him at 32, I think is, a very good spot. It's a good spot for him, because if he gets drafted sooner, I think he'll be labeled as a bust, however that is interpreted. But I feel like if he goes later, he'll be more effective, and he'll be, labeled as a guy who just didn't develop. But I feel like he has a very good potential. He's got a lot of skills that I think not a lot of people in this draft class have, in terms of, his size and his ability to cover and be in space and run and be effective in the run game. He looked very good in the pass coverage drills or in like the hip drills. It looked very natural to him, and that's a very good thing to have. So Malik Jefferson at number 32 to the Philadelphia Eagles rounds out my 4.0 mock draft. Alright, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy, and let me know down in the comment section below what you think about my picks and my player analysis and all that stuff. You can let me know if you think I'm wrong. You can let me know if you think I'm right. I'll argue with you if you want to argue about how stupid I am. I had somebody do that in my last mock draft video, my 3.0 video, but With all that being said, I am going to have some more player ranking videos, some more mock drafts, some more player analysis, maybe a couple versus series before the draft comes along, and also I'm going to be doing probably a video about reacting to the free agency period. Probably once a NFL draft comes along, I won't be making that video. It'll probably be a couple days before the NFL draft. I'll sit down and I'll react to all the moves in free agency that happened, all the contracts, all the players that went certain places, and I'll probably be sitting down and analyzing those and grading those and letting you guys have a video on that. As the free agency period does approach us in a couple days, I know that I'm sorry it took me so long to put out this mock draft. There was just a lot of trades that happened and a lot of releases and cuts, and so I had to sit down. I made a mock draft after the combine, and then I had to sit down and re-evaluate and reformulate and say, okay, these teams got these players, so now I have to go back and move a bunch of people around, move a bunch of picks to what teams need and all that stuff. So it's finally out. It's here for you guys to watch, and if you did enjoy, like I said earlier, leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, this has been XLT signing out.